Today we will review second language proficiency models. In order to review any model, first of all, let's try to understand what we mean by proficiency. According to Higgs, proficiency is the ability to function effectively in the language in real life context. So here we need to understand a word function effectively in the language in real life context. When we say function effectively, all we are trying to say is that we should be able to make our message understood, and understood the way we want it to be understood by the recipient, and get the corresponding response or the desired response on the behalf of the recipient. So for that particular matter, we need to choose the right type of words and have a clear understanding of the context in which we are using that language so that our purpose of communication is fulfilled. Whereas Thomas considered proficiency to correspond to person's overall competence and ability to perform in language 2, which is the second language. So according to Thomas, it's the overall competency in terms of linguistic understanding, in terms of the context in which that linguistic input is to be used. And this should constitute the ability to act or to perform in the second language context. According to Hulstein, language proficiency is the extent to which an individual possesses the linguistic cognition necessary to function in a given communicative situation, in a given modality, which is the listening, speaking, reading, or writing. So according to Hulstein, it is the ability to which, or an extent to which, a learner possesses the linguistic cognition or knows the cognitive processes of any linguistic data, and knows how those processes work and how they are used in any communicative situation with the help of or using listening, reading, writing, and speaking modules. So what is actually mean by proficiency in second language context? Now this is a huge challenge for teachers, researchers, and language testers because of the complexity of data, because of the complexity of the grammatical rules of the second language. So there is no clear-cut answer to that or clear-cut definition. So we have seen that researchers come up with number of different definitions with regard to proficiency. Theoretical stance and conceptions of second language proficiency are dependent on what we believe, what our perception of second language actually entails. So it is not that easy. So all the theoretical data and our concepts about second language proficiency is highly dependent on our own perceptions and beliefs that we consider should be important and vital for forming the second language proficiency. Models of second language competence, that is, models of what constitutes second language proficiency. So when we are talking about models of second language competency or competence, we are basically referring to the models which constitute the proficiency of second language. So let's review second language proficiency models proposed by a number of researchers. Lado described model of language proficiency as the intersections between 4 language elements, which are pronunciation, grammatical structure, lexicon, and cultural meaning, and 4 language skills, which is speaking, listening, writing, and reading. So intersection, it is basically the junction. The proficiency is the junction or a joining point between the language element and the skills. So learners' language development may occur at a different pace in the 4 skills and considers the degree of achievement in each of these separate skills as a variable to be tested. So according to Lado, you have the proficiency as intersections between the language element and skills, and the important aspect to be understood is the degree of development that occur at different pace in 4 skills. And the degree of achievement is something which needs to be tested. Carroll argued that L2, second language competence, included both knowledge of the language system and facility. So 2 things. Knowledge is the knowledge or understanding of the language system, and facility is the ease or a comfortable process in its use, how it is facilitated. And he is known for the use of both discrete point and integrative test in order to test both aspects. So in order to test knowledge and facility, you have discrete point. Discrete points are where the tests can be conducted of the items separately, and integrative tests are where all the items are tested in integration of each other. Himes introduced model of communicative competence in response to Chomsky's model of linguistic competence and emphasized the pragmatic aspect of language use. So Himes introduced communicative competence as a reaction to linguistic competence because he feels that linguistic competence only takes into account the linguistic data, whereas the communicative competence requires the pragmatic or the sociolinguistics aspect of the language use. Cannell and Swan attempted a typology, systematic characterizations, or you would say the definition based on the similar or characteristics or traits. Communicative second language competence involved grammatical and sociolinguistic competence as well as strategic competence, which is the compensatory communication strategies to be used when there is a breakdown in one of the other competencies. So here you see a typology where you have grammatical as well as pragmatical, and the third competence is strategic competence, which means that provide assistance or help where there is a breakdown in one of the other competencies. Different practices and approaches are there in order to evaluate second language proficiency. One is that SLA-oriented approaches focus on complexity, accuracy, and fluency. Complexity with regard to the linguistic items and as well as tasks. Accuracy is a very important concept, but in order to measure a proficiency, it does come into clash with native speakers' own linguistic norms. And fluency is the E at which the learner develops the fluency. All these 3 are it's difficult to because they do interfere with each other. Kapa space analysis is another type of model which help the researchers and teachers in order to assess or define pedagogical strategies based on this data collected from the second language learner to assess the second language proficiency. Then the working memory capacity and the lexical in terms of the diversity in the different types of lexicon. You have the proficiency assessment test, which are discrete point versus integrative. Discrete is isolated or separately assessment. Integrative is the integration. Direct versus indirect. Objective versus subjective. Group testing versus individual testing. There are 4 mentioned because of the difficulty of the multi-component nature of the proficiency assessment. To conclude, review of second language proficiency models show that several factors contribute to the lack of congruence between models and assessment due to the diversity in approaches used by teachers, researchers, language testers, and students in defining second language proficiency and devising assessment accordingly.